Okay, hello everyone. Let's start with this webinar, Engaging Citizens in Climate Action, Fostering Behavioral Change. This is part of the EU Climate Action Academy, and we are very happy to welcome you here. We have waited 1 minute for people to arrive, but now let's start with the official webinar. Before we start, we of course want to mention the housekeeping rules. It's very important to be safe and respectful space to create this for everyone, so let's all try to create this. By default, all attendees' microphones and cameras switched off. Same for the cameras, but you can use the chat function to interact with other participants and ask questions to the panelists. There will also be polls launched, so please be ready to respond because the interactivity is part of this webinar and it will also facilitate. So please, Laura, I give you the floor.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Frans. And I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the European Commission, the Directorate General for Climate Action, to this first webinar of our new EU Climate Action Academy. We launched the European Climate Pact a few years ago as part of the European Green Deal. It's part of the EU institutions' work to make Europe climate neutral and climate resilient. And the pact is really a component of that effort that is about people. It's about what individuals and organizations and in all parts of society and at all levels can do to contribute to fighting climate change and creating a better future. So this is our overall goal. What we do as part of the Climate Pact is raising awareness, is encouraging action, and it's bringing people together to share, to learn, and to connect with each other. And what we are doing today is part of that effort. I would like to give you a little bit of flavor of what else we are doing as part of the European Climate Pact, as I know some of you are already very much engaged. For others, this might be completely new. So some of the main activities of the European Climate Pact is a network of Climate Pact ambassadors, people from all around Europe who are taking climate action and encouraging others to take climate action too. We have a network of partner organizations who also are leaders in climate action or who want to show the way and bring others on board. And together with this community of ambassadors and partners, we are organizing different types of activities in different parts of Europe and also at the very local level, thanks to a network of country coordinators. So there's a contact point in each EU member state for Climate Pact activities at the local level. And through these local activities, through the bottom-up initiatives and the grassroots initiatives that the Pact brings together, we also want to bring a message to the European level of the action that is already happening all around Europe, and that contributes to these broader European objectives and in the end global objectives that we have in terms of managing and responding to the challenge of climate change. So today is one way of getting engaged and learning more. The program of today is a packed seminar of information and examples, and you can find more of those also on the Pact website. We have a knowledge hub with plenty of resources. We have tools that you can use to get active. And of course, there's a newsletter that you can subscribe to get more information, and you will get more examples of what's out there during the session today. So thanks a lot, Frans, as our host, and in advance to all of our speakers, and looking forward to the interesting discussions today. Thank you all and welcome.
Thank you, Laura, for this excellent introduction. And also thank you for all the people in the chat. I see quite some activity there already from people coming from everywhere. So that's very nice to see. For today, so what we will discuss today, first of all, we will start with some key behavioral theories that scientific researchers use in the explanation of climate change and why people conduct sustainable behavior or not, and how we can try to influence people to act more sustainable and take into account all the consequences that their actions will have. Then subsequently, Merel will give some explanation about cognitive biases and also how they work. Then we have three different guest speakers that will also give an explanation about their work, their daily activities, and how this can be related also to the behavioral theories that we have explained in the beginning. So this is me. I'm Professor Dr. Frans Volkvoort. I'm a co-founder and director at PredictBuy, which is a company located in Barcelona. We're a research and consultancy company working in several European projects. And then there's also my colleague Mero Gripping. She's a research consultant working at PredictBuy as well, and she will also give some explanation about the cognitive bias that we feel have a significant influence on sustainable behavior of people. So why is behavioral change important? First of all, because we know that we currently live in the Anthropocene, which is like a key time zone that has been distinguished because we have a significant influence on our environment. So the actual behavior of people from day to day have a significant influence on the pollution, but also on the direct consequence on climate change. And we believe this behavior should be changed in order to be more sustainable and less polluting. Therefore, we also believe that several reports, like the latest IPCC report, already showed that changes in our lifestyle and behavior can result in a reduction of 40 to 70% in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And of course, this offers a significant untapped potential, but it's also very difficult, as most of you will know. This is also something that we, from PredictBuy point of view, work in several European projects, trying to ensure that we understand better how we can change behavior in order to be more sustainable in the daily things that we do. We also see in the daily newspapers that it's very difficult. Most of the people know that they should act more sustainable, that they should change certain behaviors, for example, reducing waste, or maybe consider better the recycling processes of different products that people buy, but also flying behavior and eating of meat is something that is repeatedly communicated in newspapers. Nonetheless, although most of the people know that what they decide on a daily basis influences the larger community and also our direct environment on a more significant scale, people still act differently. And this is something that we try to investigate. And first of all, I would like to ask you for the first poll to answer the question, which sustainable behavior do you aim to produce, to change the most, to provide the most? Eat more plant-based diets or switch to renewable energy sources, reducing single-use fast consumption, reducing the water and food waste, or switch to sustainable transport modes. So which one of these sustainable behaviors do you aim to promote the most? And please provide me with your answers. I see now already in the slide that most of the people until now, they try to promote reducing the consumption. And then second is to eat more plant-based diets. I think that this is working quite well. So I think that most of the people, they try to change their single-use and fast consumption. It's now 33%. So 1/3 of the people that have entered the Slido, they say that they try to promote this the most. And then the second one is to eat more plant-based diets. There's also, of course, the most healthiest one. So this is also a direct health benefit for people around them. And I think that most people have finished the Slido. So thank you for this information. So we see that 1/3 of the people, they say that reducing single-use and fast consumption is the one that they promote the most, which of course has a significant influence on the pollution and the waste of products in reality. But how do we foster this behavioral change? So how do we change people's behavior? This is of course a very important question because as we already saw, many people, they would like to change the behavior. They think it's important to change the behavior, but in the end, we find it very difficult to change the day-to-day behavior. What we believe as behavioral scientists, we believe that to foster sustainable behavioral change, we need to create behavioral understanding because we know that, for example, nudges, they have effect mostly on the short term, but not on the long term. And especially in different contexts, it's very difficult to change people's behavior on a day-to-day basis. Therefore, we believe that if you, as the one trying to change people's behaviors, also understand why people do or do not change their behavior in certain contexts, it's also very important for the people themselves to understand better why they do certain things and why they should better understand how they behave and why they behave in certain circumstances. That's also what we try to explain to you today. So we will focus now on the key behavioral theories that actually explain human behavior. And we selected two of them. There are, of course, many. There are more than 10, but we decided to focus on these two. First of all, because they have a long track record in consumption behavior, but also in climate change behavior. And also because we believe that this could be a starting point to also discuss the other aspects of this webinar. So first of all, we go to the theory of planned behavior. This is a theory that has been developed in the 1990s and has been very influential. And I think that the most important part is that we believe, and this theory believes, that attitude and intention are the most significant predictors of behavior. This is a psychological theory that tries to understand which mechanism plays a role on the background in people's day-to-day behavior. And what the theory proposes to say is that the attitude towards behavior has a significant influence on the intention. And this is mostly related to the behavioral beliefs that people have. Subsequently, we also know that the subjective norm, so what is the norm of your direct environment, of your peers, of your family, or your colleagues at work, also have a significant influence on the intention to change your behavior. Subsequently, the third important factor is the perceived behavior control, which means that if you have the perception that you can actually control your behavior, this of course influences the effect of the behavior itself. So if people have a positive attitude towards changing their behavior, if they have the intention to change their behavior, then they need to have this perception of behavioral control in order to facilitate this change in their behavior. And of course, the actual behavior control has a direct effect on the behavior, because if you cannot control your own behavior, it's also very difficult to change your behavior. So if you look at this from a promoting or behavior change perspective, then you of course need to know first of all what is the attitudes of the participant or of this person towards changing their behavior or towards sustainable behavior. Subsequently, you also need to know what is a subjective norm in the context that these people are living. So for example, in different countries, in different contexts, in different regions, but also in different working environments, there is a generic subjective norm that influences people's intention to do some certain behavior. The same is also, of course, important to have the perceived behavior control. So if you know that people want to change their behavior, so they have the intention to change the behavior, you also need to provide them with the actual behavior control that people have. Let me give you some examples for this. So first of all, we also see in several reports that 93% of EU citizens, they believe that climate change is a serious problem. So actually almost all people in the EU, they believe that climate change is something seriously. Then 88% of EU citizens, they agree that greenhouse gases should be reduced to make the EU climate neutral by 2050. So again, almost all people, they believe that something should be changed. But then, of course, the question is how many people themselves believe they are responsible for tackling this climate change? So the next question to you is, what percentage of EU citizens feels personally responsible for tackling climate change? First answer is 75, second answer is 55, third answer is 35 or 15. So what do you believe? What is the percentage of EU citizens that feel personally responsible for tackling climate change? I see that most people say 35 until now. Half of you believe it's 35, some of you believe it's 55. Others think 15 or 75, 7%. Still half of the people, we have now 230 answers. They say that is our 35. So I think that many people also are quite aware about the difference between what people believe that other people should do and what they should do themselves. So I think that many people answered now. So it's now 250. So I think that the highest answer is 35%. This is indeed correct. So we indeed see that 35% of the people hold themselves personally responsible for climate change. So this, of course, a significant gap between what people believe that climate change is a serious problem. 88% also believe that something should be done and that should be reduced. But then again, if you look at people and ask them the question, what should you change? There's a significant gap between what people hold them personally responsible to and also what they think that other people should do. So what is the examples that we can find why people do not change their behavior? For example, willingness to eat more sustainable foods. So for example, eat less meat and have a more plant-based diet. They mostly say it's too expensive or it's not available in my supermarket. They also say that they're a little bit concerned about how it would impact my health if they don't eat meat, that they miss certain nutrients that they need to have a healthy body, but also that they say that the labeling on the food product is unclear. So several examples why people believe that they should not change their behavior because of several reasons that influences their decision directly. So then, of course, the most important part, and also which is why you're organizing this webinar, is to see how we can change these behaviors, how we can make people more sustainable. For example, if the behavior belief is that sustainable foods are too expensive or that they have some health concerns about sustainable foods, then we should try to provide them with some kind of inspiration for local sustainable meals or increase the information on how this product would have an impact on their health. If people get this information, this subsequently can also increase the willingness or the belief at least that it will influence the behavior. We also have the normative belief, for example, that meat should be part of a meal, which is something that is cultural dependent and is also very much influencing people's decision. And then we see that we can also, for example, make the plant-based option a default, so that by default you have a plant-based option and subsequently you should ask or require meat as an additional part of the meal that you have selected. This has been conducted in several scientific studies and it has been shown that this is quite effective. It can also be, for example, the exposure of plant-based choices and meals, because if you go to a restaurant, mostly 5 to 10% of the menu is a plant-based diet, while all of the rest of the products that they sell or the menu that they sell contains meat or fish. But of course, you can also change it around in order to make the normative belief different. Because now if you go to a restaurant, the normative belief is that you should eat meat or fish because most of the meals that they provide to you are based on this selection. We can of course also change the control belief. So for example, sustainable foods are not available in my supermarket. It could also be that then if you improve it, better labeling of products providing information about sustainable foods, that could also of course change people's behavior. Also, of course, we need to have the availability of these plant-based diets or plant-based products in the supermarket, but the labeling of itself also provides more information that can change people's controlled beliefs that they have. Okay, then let's move to this. So the most important part of this theory of planned behavior is that you have to focus on attitudes and intentions because they are mostly part of the expectation or perception of people's behavior. Then subsequently you also have the controlled belief that you have the belief over your behavior, so that you believe that you can conduct this behavior, yes or no. This can also be promoted and changed, but then of course you also need to think about the context that people live in. Then if you go to the second theoretical model, we have the trans-theoretical model, which is actually based on different stages. So there are stages of change that you need to be aware of if you want to influence or if you want to change people's behavior. For example, if you are in the pre-contemplation phase, so you're even unaware of the problem, which I believe that most of you will agree with me, it's very difficult in this time that you are not aware of the climate change being something that is out there and that we should be aware of. But still, some people might be unaware of this problem. Subsequently, you also have the complementation phase. Then you are aware of the problem of the desired behavior change, but you find it very difficult to change your behavior. We also can see that people are in a preparation phase, so they want to take action. I think that many of the people that you speak to are in this phase, or this stage, so they are prepared to change their behavior, but they find it very difficult to change it, or they are still figuring out how to change this. These are the main group that you can, of course, help with different instruments to change their behavior. All these groups are still in the intention phase, so they still are intended to do something and they are still working on different motivations or action plans to do something. Then if you go to the next phase, you go to the action phase, then you actually already conduct the desired behavior, you implement this in your daily behavior, and you try to change your sustainability of your daily decisions. The last phase is the maintenance phase. Of course, this is something that we would like to achieve in the next few years, and this is then you work to sustain the behavior change. So then you already have implemented this change in your day-to-day behavior, and it has created some kind of habit. This is already to actual behavior. So you see people doing different things. So they buy less products, they fly less or don't fly anymore, or they eat less or no meat, in order to also consider the direct environment as a significant factor that they can influence. So then we will go to the next phase. This is the cognitive biases. So then I will give the floor also to, first of all, I will explain what cognitive biases are and where do they come from. And then we will give some examples, and then I will give the floor to Merel. But first I will discuss what cognitive biases actually are. So first of all, cognitive biases is systematic error in thinking. So it's a judgment that deviates from what you could consider desirable or optimal from the perspective of accepted norms or correct in terms of formal logic. So what we see, and this has been shown in many different psychological and economic research, people make many different decisions. So they believe something, but then they conduct something differently. And therefore, this is a very important factor that influences human behavior that you should take into account when considering the work that you do. This is mostly based on dual process models. What we see in this theoretical model, this actually has been developed by several researchers, but mostly by Kahneman and Tversky, who actually also won a Nobel Prize for the work that they have been doing in psychology, but they got the Nobel Prize in economics because most of the economic research was focused on rational human beings that could make rational decision making all the time if they have all the information available. In reality, it doesn't work like this. What they have been shown and what has been quite influential since the publications of the theoretical model is that people have two systems. The first system, system one, is mostly focused on intuition and instinct. So they rely on heuristics, and they also are quite unconscious about this influence. It is mostly a fast and associative way of thinking, and it mostly is based on automatic pilot. So this is something that most people do most of the time. So although this is quite difficult to establish, but scientific research shows that 95% of your day-to-day behavior is actually focused on system one. Think about simple things like drinking water, taking a shower, or going to work. These are mostly things that you do not think a lot about. It is mostly behavior that you conduct automatically. Then you have system two, which is mostly focused on rational thinking. And there you see that this is focused on 5% of your actual decision making and on your behavior. This takes effort. It takes a lot of cognitive effort. So you also should be taking the time because it's mostly slow. It's also based on logical reasoning, and it's also indecisive. So you really still consider all the thoughts and decisions that you need to make in order to make a calculation of all the cost and benefits of this decision, and subsequently you make a decision. So system one is mostly based on heuristics and on cognitive biases, and then again Merel will give an explanation of these soon. And there we see that people have bounded rationality, and they may sometimes make incorrect decisions based on these heuristics. We already showed that many people believe that something should be changed in order to reduce the greenhouse gases, but also we should change our behavior because we have a negative impact on our environment. But then again, if you look at how many people believe themselves that should change their behavior, there is a serious significant gap that influences this tremendously. Then you need to have system two. So this is actually what we try to also explain to you today, that we need to override this automatic or habitual behavior. This is needed to create behavioral understanding. So if people understand why they behave as they do, you can change it. If they don't know how they are behaving and what is the reason that they are behaving like this of course makes it much more difficult to influence their behavior. So all the information that you provide people about why they should change their behavior is based on system 2, and the normal habitual behavior that people execute is based on system 1. And this is actually something that you want to overrule by providing them with more information and more insights how to change their behavior. Think also about labeling, education, training, or reflection session with citizens. So the question to you is, what cognitive bias are you already aware of? Can you please describe them in only 1 or 2 words? So again, you will have this slide exercise, so please describe in only 1 or 2 words what cognitive biases you are aware of until now. I see confirmation bias, halo effect, risk and loss averse is a very popular and influential one, selection bias, bystander effect, scarcity, time inconsistency, group thinking, climate change journalism, cultural and religious bias, I see in the chat. Thank you for all these answers. So cognitive dissonance, marketing, confirmation bias is the one that most people mention. Then we have selection bias, marketing, positivity bias, very good one. Cultural bias, very nice. Selection biases, bystander effect. So thank you for all this. This is very, very good to get all this information. We will take 1 more minute and then we'll continue. Group thinking, IKEA, spotlight, overconfidence bias, social bias, halo effect, indeed. So I see that several people are already aware of several biases. Important to remember is that there was a list of 100 or maybe even more cognitive biases that have been discovered in scientific research. And most of them, they are investigated, but also try to be used to try to overrule these biases in order to ensure that people also change their behavior following these biases, because you make many mistakes. Based on the mistakes, of course, you cannot change your behavior. Okay, so let's move to the next phase, and then I will also give the floor to Merel. So she will explain more about the examples of biases and also how they can be overcome.
Yes, so thank you, Frans, for introducing the concept of cognitive biases to us. And as you have seen, and as you're already aware of some, there are many different types of cognitive biases that exist. But for this webinar, we will discuss 3 of them that are also relevant in the context of climate change and provide you with some examples and some tools in which you can also overcome them. So those are the 3 biases that we would like to discuss today. So the first one is the present bias, which refers to our tendency to choose immediate rewards over future rewards, even if the immediate rewards are smaller. So if we would take the longer term perspective, or if we would be a little bit more patient, we would actually be better off, but still we're tempted to take this short-term perspective and really go for the immediate gain. And this present bias is actually present in many different aspects of our daily life. Sorry, Frans, I'm trying to go to the next slide, which I should be able to do, but thank you. Great. So as I said, there are many, this present bias appears in many aspects of our daily life. Think, for example, about food choices, all the times that you were presented with the opportunity to have a cake or to take a chocolate, most likely you would give in, even though in the back of your head you would know that on the long term this is not really good for your health, and if you would not take it, you would actually be better off. The same happens also, for example, in climate-related investment decisions. So think about solar panels. This really requires a large upfront investment, while the payoffs of these investments are only on the long term and in the future. So we may not make this investment, but rather spend this money right now on something that, on something that makes us happy immediately, or that we can get a gain or a pleasure from immediately, even though on the long term it would actually be beneficial to make this investment. And then the third one. The third one relates to climate policy. So it's not just us normal citizens, so to say, but also our politicians that really suffer from this present bias. They are driven by the short term, making sure that they win votes, that they drive economic growth and really give in to the needs that people have right now. While they would make different choices if they would take the long term into account and also make sure that in the long run we can ensure that we have a livable planet, but they really are biased also by this short term perspective. And the reason that sorry, so now I'm sorry, the controls are a little bit weird, but I think Frans said now I managed to have control. If not, I will let you know. So we see that this present bias is problematic in many climate-related decisions, as the benefit or the payoff is typically in the future. So this makes it fairy for us to go for that short-term gain rather than taking that long-term perspective. And so what can we do to overcome this present bias? So one of the things that we can do is try to trigger our system 2 that Frans was just referring to. And really make sure that we make a more conscious choice, for example, by visualizing and interacting with our future self. So if we think about ourselves in the future, what would our future self want? What would our future self prefer? Just to make sure that this future result is a lot more tangible. And another thing that we can do is bring the rewards of sustainable choices to the present and to make sure that the long-term and the short-term benefits are more aligned. And I think one nice example of how to make sure that those two things are more aligned, you can see it here. It's the true pricing method. So for example, for this piece of cheese in the supermarket, the normal price, it would be around $4. However, if you would use the true pricing method and also incorporate the environmental cost in the price, which are typically costs that happen on the long run, the cheese would actually be much more expensive. So if you would be faced with this true price, which incorporates the environmental cost, it would be much easier for you to make the choice that is also beneficial in the future, because you can directly see it in your bank account and when you pay the groceries. And then a second bias that is relevant in the context of climate change is the status quo bias. Which refers to our unwillingness to change the status quo because this really requires effort and also involves uncertainty. So we would rather stay with the situation as it is than that we will make a change. And again, this is something that also happens in many aspects of our daily life. For example, if you think about the bank that you're currently with, chances are that you're still with the bank account that maybe your parents ever opened for you, even though it might be more beneficial for you or more sustainable to actually change to another bank. Same with energy providers or any other subscription that you're maybe not using anymore, but it just requires an effort to change the provider, change the subscription, or even maybe cancel it. And also when we're trying to incorporate new habits, for example, maybe you bought a reusable cup and you were planning to use this every morning that you go to work. However, you find yourself ending up needing a single-use cup because it's not in your system, and it really requires your mind and your thoughts to think about taking it. So you really need to incorporate this into your system, but that simply requires effort. And the reason why the status quo bias is quite problematic in climate-related decisions, it's exactly because of this, because it asks us to break with the status quo, to change our behaviors and to change our current consumption patterns. But this is not an easy task. So what can we do to overcome the status quo bias? So actually, we can make use of the fact that we are holding on to the status quo and actually make use of that kind of lazy system one by making the sustainable choice the default option. For example, in congresses or large events, sometimes they present the vegetarian option as the default one, and you can really see that it results in a much larger share of people going for this option. So in that case, we're really using our lazy system. On the other hand, we could also try to really activate system one and create, it's something that Frans also referred to inform people, to educate people that they are aware of the choices they have and also what impact the different choices have, so that they will be able to make a more conscious choice. Thirdly, we can use framing, so we can present the changes in terms of gains instead of losses and really emphasize the benefits that somebody will experience for making a different choice rather than the losses. So saying, oh, you can't do that anymore, or you can't have this anymore. Really make sure to just emphasize the benefit of something, of which I will show an example in one slide. And the last part, as we saw in the theories, our intentions and our plans or preparations really help to facilitate the actual action. So when you're trying to take on a new habit or a new behavior, really try to make sure you put it somewhere in your agenda, or that you have reminders or whatever it is that helps you to be conscious about it and to really make this effort to make the change. Those things really help. And then on the next two slides, I have two examples of this third option. So the framing option, where changes are presented in gains instead of losses. So one, it's a commercial actually from the Deutsche Bahn from a few years ago, where they were trying to promote traveling by train and going on holiday in your own country. So the right picture, it's somewhere in Germany, and the left picture, it's somewhere far away in China. And here, of course, they were saying you don't need to go far away, and it will also benefit your bank account, because for only 20 euros you can see the exact same thing. And I think another nice example, it's the next slide here. This was something that I came across on LinkedIn, where somebody was suggesting to Google, hey, why don't you promote the bike much more for in-city traffic and for very short distances? Because actually there are a lot of benefits connected to taking the bike instead of the car, which might be the status quo. But here on the bottom, you can see the benefits that he emphasizes, like you're much faster, or well, you're faster, 2 minutes, but still faster. You reduce CO2 emissions, and you even can take off your workout for the day because you have your calories burned. But by really making these benefits, or by highlighting these benefits, it's much more likely that somebody would at least consider, but also maybe take the bike instead of the normal thing that he would do, which is taking the car. And then we will move on to the last bias that we will discuss today, which is called the pseudo-inefficacy bias, which refers to the feeling that our individual actions don't really contribute to solving a larger problem. And this is also related to the statistics that that Frans showed earlier, that even though we believe climate change is a serious problem and we believe action is required, we don't really feel that we have the control or that we are responsible for making these changes, but rather put it on, for example, companies or governments. And so one of the theories that is quite closely related and partially explains this feeling, it's a strategy of the commons, which states that we tend to pursue our own interest, or tend to make the choice that is in our self-interest over the interest of the society or the community, even though that would actually be in the interest of everyone, and everyone would be better off by making the choice which favors the community. And this happens on different levels. For example, on a more individual level, where somebody could say, hey, why should I reduce my meat consumption? Because I know my neighbor will continue to buy burgers anyway. So he will do the same, even though both would be better off if they would reduce their meat consumption at least a little bit. But for companies, the same argument holds. So companies may say, hey, if we don't dump our waste into the water, another company will do it. So why should we stop dumping our waste into the water? even though all companies would be better off if they would still have unpolluted, high quality and fresh water. And lastly, arguments or countries or governments can also use the same type of reasoning, where they say, hey, why should we reduce our fossil fuel consumption if other countries continue to use it anyway, even though all the countries would be better off reducing their fossil fuel consumption. So as you can imagine, this pseudo-inefficacy bias is quite problematic in the context of climate change, but also in the context of other public goods such as water or the soil, as they are a global and collective problem that really requires action from all the individual actors in the system. But that makes it quite difficult to realize. Then what can we do to overcome this feeling that our actions don't really add up to that don't really contribute to solving the larger problem? So one of the things that can help is providing feedback to really show the positive results of your actions and to make it more tangible. And I think one nice example that was actually an initiative within this climate pact, so you may be familiar with it. It's called A World, which is a platform where you can track your environmental actions and really see what outcomes they have and the tangible results they have. And you can also join groups, so you can also see what the collective, like all the individual actions together, how they add up to the collective. So providing feedback is one way. Then, as I said, because we are tempted to choose or to pursue our self-interest or to choose this over the community interest, it's also one thing that can help is to really focus on the personal impact something has. So I think Frans also mentioned it before, like, for example, focusing on the health benefits of certain diets is something that is really, that makes the choice more personal, or maybe the consequences for in terms of cost is also something that somebody can feel personally. So these, highlighting these personal impacts may help people to change their choice or to reconsider. And then lastly, creating accountability to others to increase the commitment and to normalize the behavior also really helps. So maybe if you make it more public or to tell others about your plans or something that you're aiming to change, this can really help yourself to keep the motivation and to keep the commitment, but also to show others, hey, I'm planning to do this. So maybe somebody else was also thinking about it and he would feel more supported and see that there are more people working on this and you're not the only one. So 2 examples in particular concerning this providing feedback tool. I think one nice example is from the COVID crisis, where we could really see that all the individual actions that we took and sticking to the rules that were laid out really helped to decrease the amount of cases, because constantly we were shown graphs and we were shown the progress. So this really helped to motivate and to really change your behavior. And I think on the left, it also, this is from a city in India where for the last decades, the sky was always very polluted and it never saw clean light or clean air. But I think this one also really clearly shows the effect of our consumption levels and of our consumption patterns on the air. But these are just 2 examples to show what feedback can do. And this was actually the last cognitive bias for now. So to close this topic, I still have one question for you, which of these biases was most useful for you to learn about? So now the Slido should pop up again on the right, so you can make your choice in one of the 3 biases that was just presented to you. So I'll give some time for you to answer the poll. So I think the pseudo-inefficacy bias, so this feeling that individual contributions don't really help to solve a larger problem, is clearly the one that stands out. So yeah, I also think it's a very interesting one. So thanks a lot for answering the poll. And Frans, I will give the floor back to you.
Yes, thank you, Merel. And I think this is a very clear example of different cognitive biases that influence day-to-day decision making, and they are also a consequence of the theoretical examples that I started this webinar with. What we see is that this attitude and attention is significantly influencing people's behavior, and of course also the perceived behavioral control that you have is very significant, and these also relate to the cognitive biases that Merel explained. And we try to provide you with some instrumental knowledge how to overcome these cognitive bias. So actually to use system 2 to overrule system 1, the normal actual behavior that you have, in order to provide more sustainable behavior. Now I would like to give the floor to our 3 additional external speakers. So first of all, I will give the floor to Dr. Viren Mitev, who is an ambassador of the European Climate Pact. Subsequently, I will give the floor to Jeroen Jans, who is a partner with the Inner Green Deal. And then we also have Hendrik Bruns from the GRC that will also give some explanation about what the GRC is going to do. But first of all, I will give the floor to Viren. And I will give you the floor now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to present my work and who am I. Thanks to PredictBuy and also to the European Climate Pact for co-hosting the event. In regard of what we are talking about until now, I'll try to continue and make a bridge between theory and action and slowly move into more examples what can be done in which I'm involved. So my name is Viren Mitev. I hold a PhD in philosophical anthropology, and I'm author of the Ecological Manifesto that I'll explain about a little bit in advance. After that, I'm founder of Ecological Manifesto Maneko Foundation, and I'm also EU Climate Pact Ambassador. Also, I participate as alumni of the US Department of State Professional Fellows Program, and I'm global leader to Al Gore's Climate Reality Leadership Corps and representative of local branches of organizations such as the Citizens Climate Lobby, UNGO, Earth Charter International, and some other minor organizations. I'll start from theory. My dissertation was titled Concept of Personality in an Anthropology of Personality. The aim of the dissertation was to give overview of all the aspects that are creating a personality and what are the perfect conditions and the context for full development of personalities. The realization that I had in the tool that I was using during creating the dissertation was that personalities are created and constructed in the context in which they are formed. So this means that if we change the context, we can change personalities as well. I'm trying to move the slides, but maybe it's not visible. Yes, those are this is the aim of the dissertation and the main understanding. So I was working on this dissertation from 2014 until 2019. And in 2015, I had the opportunity to do an exchange in Paris, in France, when the Paris Agreement was signed. It was the first time for me to understand about climate change and that countries were trying for more than 30 years to reach an agreement for limiting global warming. It was striking for me, and when I came back to Bulgaria, I asked students in the university, do they know about climate change? And they didn't. I tried to explain briefly. I asked them, do they think if extreme weather events will affect their lifetime, it will be present in their lifetime? They said probably no. And I realized that there is a big gap in knowledge, and there is no transition between scientific knowledge that was present for COP21 and then what the wider public is aware of. Next slide, please. So what I could do at this time was to start reading and writing articles on the topic. And slowly I started to collect practices, what we as individuals can do in our daily lives for saving energy, reducing our energy consumption and resources, and also producing less waste. After collecting and collaborating with people and having more than 100 practices, I had to explain why I'm doing this, and this is when the Ecological Manifesto was born. And after many other collaboration and additions, at the end it became a socio-ecological framework for building sustainable and resilient communities. But still, traveling around and talking about the manifesto and what we can do wasn't enough. And this is how, with like-minded people that I happen to know around 2017, we decided to start an organization, and I founded the Ecological Manifesto Maneko Foundation in Bulgaria. Next slide, please. And next one. Yes, this is the people that helped me in the beginning, that gave the initial push for the organization to start. And after that, I continued locally with the administrative team that we have here in Sofia. Next slide, please. The first activities that we started doing were movie screenings with discussions after that, photo exhibition, that this is a traveling exhibition that we show in different places. For example, this exhibition that you see on the photo stayed for 2 weeks in the center of the city this summer, and now it's going to be shown for 1 month in the Sofia Zoo. Then a lot of campaigns and volunteering events and actions, a lot of cleanups, forestation events, cycling events, and also donation events, as well as upcycling events done by volunteers, participation in international events, and also the activity that kept the organization running from 2018 until now were the Erasmus Plus youth exchanges. We sent more than 300 Bulgarians to work on environmental topics abroad and find more like-minded people, and also form a community here in Sofia in Bulgaria. Next slide, please. I don't have the control of the presentation, I'm sorry. Slowly we managed to gain expertise, confidence, and team of educators, and we started doing educational workshops with schools, with youth groups, with youth NGOs, with eco clubs, and we finally formed something like a professional team and professional workshops that we had. The workshop consists of 4 parts. We explain the holistic approach of understanding climate change. We follow the connection between human activities, the changes that appear in nature, the changes for the climate, then the changes for nature again, and what are the final consequences for humanity as a whole. Then we explain a little bit more with the scientific graphs and information what climate change is. We speak with the participants how they feel about what they know, what they have understand about climate change, because on psychological side, on emotional side, many times participants don't engage fully with the data that they have learned, but every time when they hear about climate change, they will remember how they felt when they were working on a topic. And then at the end, we try to invite them to give such suggestions, what can be done to solve climate crisis, and what they can do in order to help in this process, and also to start doing it from now or from tomorrow, the latest. We are doing it because we believe it's honest, and it's important for people to know, and this will give them the basis for the change of their choices, and the choices that they make will consequently change their behavior and the results of their behavior. So next slide, please. With educational activities and on project-based approach for the last 1 year, we managed to travel the whole country of Bulgaria, which you see on the map. We managed to educate more than 2,000 beneficiaries, not only young people, nationwide. We did this through more than 70 workshops in more than 20 areas in the country, and with the help of more than 50 partner organizations and institutions. And we were collaborating with 20 facilitators and managed to train 20 new ones. On the map, you can see the gray areas. This is the places where we have trained facilitators that can independently continue doing educational activities on their own. Also, our wish is to make a second round of educational activities to support these facilitators, because we understand that they need more confidence in order to start doing workshops and educational activities independently on their own. Next slide, please. So our current portfolio is doing research, working on projects, youth and empowerment and citizens empowerment, climate change education, organizing corporate workshops, consultancy services for companies, interviews. The most recent interview that we did is 20 minutes interview with Dr. Robert Votar, who is co-chair of the first working group on science for the IPCC. We were lucky this year, the 61st session of IPCC happened in Sofia, and we were very close to the scientists, and we managed to organize this interview. You can find it on our social media channels. And then from the next year, we start producing educational games, which is not included in this slide, and also this social empowerment national program. It is for social entrepreneurship. We will support local groups to engage with local surrounding problems, and we will help them with a little bit of mentorship and funding to deal with these problems. And also we will organize national competition for selection of the best results, and then send the winning team to a European level and European competition. Also, we can support small startups that have good scaling up overview. Next slide, please. In result, during the years, we supported a lot of campaigns, a lot of petitions, and we were recognized as part of the global coalition of civil societies, indigenous people, social movements, and local communities for the recognition of the rights to a healthy environment by the UN. And we received with the coalition the highest human rights prize that is given only once per 5 years, which is a huge recognition, and it shows that there is no how to say, no one is too small to change anything. And if we believe that we can do something and we unite, we can achieve a lot. So on the next slide, you can see, you can find a link to our website. It's not fully developed, but we are result oriented. So we prefer first to do the work, and then if we can improve some aspects of it, we do it. And if you scan the QR code, you can find more about us. And I really thank you for the attention, and thank you to the hosts for inviting us to present our work.
Thank you, Viren. Very, very thankful for your presentation and very insightful. And I think it's also a very clear example of what we tried to explain at the beginning, that you need to have the right intention, attitude to change your behavior. And of course, it starts with yourself, and then subsequently, the next step is that you try to also understand other people's behaviors. So thank you for your example and your actual use case of the implementation of the things that we discussed before. Very insightful, thank you. Then we go to the next speaker, Jeroen Jans, with the Inner Green Deal, who is a partner of the community, and I will also give him the floor and access to the presentation. So Jeroen, the floor is yours if you are there.
Yes, thank you, Frans, and what a great presentation from Viren. It shows immediately that this cognitive bias of pseudo-inefficacy is perhaps to be reviewed. So thank you for giving me the time. I would like to say a little bit about our activities and try to make it as relevant to this group here in this presentation. For now, could you go to the next slide and just tap through? Thank you very much. So the Inner Green Deal is a non-profit non-profit learning and development organization. We are incorporated in Cologne. And if you just tap through, our mission is really to accelerate the green transformation. And I think that's just what we all want. And our way of doing that is learning and development, inner development, reconnection to nature. We bring people nature, and of course, behavior change. So if you go to the next. So we work with the EU. Our programs are available to all EU staff members, as well as the UN, and with NGOs and community leaders around the world. So we have programs in Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. In our work, we seek to advance this understanding of human behavior. And since the beginning in 2019, we've been working with Lund University Center for Sustainability Studies, and we've been co-producing and co-writing academic articles, and also an extensive white paper on what we call the human dimension of the Green Deal, showing, very much what we discussed today, cognitive biases, but also other dimensions of our human behavior. Just again, and what we try to do in addition to writing about this and organizing programs is really to bring this to life through experiences of bringing people together, bringing people into nature, and letting them experience and dialogue and share about that. Because if you go to the next, thank you, because as you can see here from David Attenborough, this famous quote, "No one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced." And I think it is in particular this ability to experience nature, to appreciate nature, is that what can really make a difference. And so we feel strongly in our programs that we need to go beyond understanding, but also experiencing directly this sense of appreciation, sometimes awe. And that is also an important dimension why people are more inclined to act, because they simply care. Go to the next slide. Yeah. And I would like to talk about 2 case studies for which we try to cultivate this sense of care for nature, and also specifically try to shift on behavior change. And one is around learning and development, capacity building, and one is specifically around community work and mobilizing and activating people in communities. Next slide, please. So first, capacity building. What do we mean with that? Well, this is about not so much about education. I know this is something we discussed earlier on this presentation, but it's more in a way about inner development. It is about who we need to become, as it were, to play our role to accelerate change in our ecosystem that we are part of. And our program used the Inner Development Goals framework, and some of you may be familiar with it, but it really tries to cultivate qualities across 5 dimensions that you can see here. Qualities around being, such as values and purpose. Qualities around thinking, long-term thinking, systems thinking. Qualities about relating, collaborating, and acting. And they really build on these theories that Frans and Merel discussed previously. By now, our programs are included in the EU Learning Catalog. So every staff member can follow them. And they're both online with, let's say 6 to 8 modules, and in nature. And we run these programs for a number of organizations, including community leaders around the world. And so apart from policymakers that I just mentioned, everyone on this call, as well as citizens, can join these open programs. And our next program is starting on October 22nd. And we have a number of free places available. And I'll be happy to share more about that if you're interested. But there's a link in the chat. So if we go to the next slide. Now, one of the sometimes unexpected findings is that environmental action doesn't only depend on convincing people with information. Yes, it's important, But beyond that, once people know about it, they still don't necessarily act on it. And what we found that a good indicator for people who tend to display pro-environmental action is their ability to be compassionate and to care again. And so the question then becomes, how do we cultivate caring attitudes in our communities, among our in our organizations, but also at a societal level? And that's an interesting question, because the ability to care and to is of course a very human quality that everyone has and everyone displays. And yet it is in our busy, high-paced life sometimes not very present. So it's about reconnecting people to that and also making people understand how important it is. Go to next. Now, some further findings, and Frans, maybe it's best to click through it so we have them all, the full 5. Yeah, stop there. Is yeah, of course, in our programs we try to cultivate these specific qualities along these 5 dimensions. So I would like to say that there's one specific quality that changes everything, but as you know, that's not really true. It is really about this mix of being, thinking, collaborating, acting, and the courage to act, of course, that can make a difference. And like with all qualities, this can be learned and trained. Nature connection obviously is very important, but here, look at the third one, a significant reduction in eco-anxiety and feelings of helplessness. This is, I feel, a particular relevant one when it comes to behavior change and action, because it coincides with this increasing gaining clarity on one's role and feelings of self-efficacy, which is what we exactly were talking about, this problem of pseudo-inefficacy, because we don't see the ripple effect of our actions. How, when we do something that influences the people around us, and in particular, if you look to the last point, to the extent that we can integrate our behavior and our views into communities or organizations, then that integration of those insights will have a much larger impact across systems. And ultimately, that's of course what we want to make sure, that people do have systemic impact and that this can be viewed and evaluated. So I think that's an important finding. Then if you want to read more about that, you know, in a few minutes, I can't cover everything, but there's the report. You can scan this QR code, and happy to talk about it another time. Go to the next slide. Let's go to the other case. Community handprint. So this is literally a hands-on and quite a direct intervention. If you go to next. So here's a question for you in the Slido, so just to get that clear to you. If you were to answer this question, to improve my overall impact on the environment, I would feel more motivated if I'm invited to, and then choose one, either reduce my negative impact, less travel, eat less meat, or increase my positive impact, contribute to initiatives at work or in my community. What would you say? And I'll be very curious to see this. So we get some votes in. Let's see what people are saying. 128, let's increase it a little bit more. Well, let's go with 180, 90 votes. Yes, let's see the results. There we go. So 75 is almost 3/4 of you think that it'd be more motivating to increase my positive impact and contribute to initiatives than rather to be told not to do something. And that's an initial, it's an important one. And let's go to the next slide. Because if that's true, then we may have a key to further mobilization of action and further behavior change. And this is what we try to cultivate with an intervention that we call community handprint. So this is an approach that cultivates collective action that contributes to positive change in the world. And of course, this contrasts with our footprint approach, which is traditionally focuses on negative impact of individual action. And what's interesting about this approach is, first of all, we don't want to minimize the fact that we do need to reduce our footprint. Everyone agrees that we do need to reduce that. However, it is not the only way we intervene in the world. By adding the handprint dimension to it, we can see that it completes this metaphor. Yes, we have negative impact, and we can have positive impact too. So that's this first dimension of balancing that out. Second, I think there are two dimensions to a handprint even. We have, of course, the outer handprint, what we can say, and that is examples could be about clean energy projects, urban greening, advocacy work. But there's an interesting dimension that we also have the inner side of the handprint. And what do we mean with the inner side? Well, this is about cultivating the ability and the capacity to act and to increase actions. So this could be about, as I was just saying before, cultivating systems thinking, enhancing collaboration, or developing resilience at community level. So this is the inner dimension that could help to accelerate outer action. And that's a nice metaphor. You can all talk about that with people in your community. You always have a hand and you can talk about these two dimensions. And what we are hearing is that that's quite positive and easy to communicate. So go to the next slide. So in a nutshell, why promoting community handprint? 3 reasons. Well, it empowers people and accelerates change. It encourages collaboration, stronger communities and systems change. And it's important because there's a lot of joy of coming together and working together that goes beyond the immediate benefit of cleaning up or reducing carbon. But it is also about building stronger communities that care, that have a whole host of side benefits, such as better health, better care, better relationships, less violence, for instance. And then, of course, thirdly, it raises the bar from climate neutrality, which is, of course, a focus of footprint reduction, to social and planetary health or thriving. So it's much more about regeneration, if you see what I mean, which I think is much more of our time. And I feel much more something to work towards, much more fun. So go to the next slide. And if you say, well, Jeroen, that sounds a little naive. It sounds nice, but it's a little naive. Well, if that's true, go and ask the 1 billion volunteers that are globally doing all sorts of actions. And in particular, if you're interested, listen to a podcast that we recently recorded with Nipon Mehta, founder of Service Space. This man alone has reunited 600,000 volunteers and do daily work around the world. And, and why do people do that? Not because of these negative, of these reasons. Yes, it's important for me, because of the joy I feel that it gives them, and the meaning and the joy and the purpose it gives them to do something good. Doing well and doing good feels good. And that's what I think 1 billion people agree upon. So that's an interesting one. And I think we shouldn't be pushed too much in a corner that we should always explain that there's something in it for them, right? There's also a lot of joy in collaboration. And again, I would highly recommend to listen to that podcast. And I'll put it in the chat in a moment so that you get also a little bit affected by that sense of enthusiasm. All right, so next slide. So this is becoming something, this community handprint. It's now a United Nations Global Change Innovation Project, which is great, but it means that there are great partners behind. So go to next slide. And now, what does this finally mean for you? There are specific tools around community engagement, capacity building, so workshops ready for you to work with change makers. There's co-creation and innovation tools, evaluation tools, and communication tools. So a lot of tools are becoming available that hopefully will enable you and the Climate Pact to grow and to have a bigger impact. And that's, I think, hopefully, that's, I think, great. I'll be happy to share more of that in the coming weeks, and also towards COP, because at COP we will be asked to report more on that. Okay, so next slide. So in conclusion, drumroll, next time you talk to citizens, don't tell them what they can do, but please invite them to step up and be part of the solution. because they would not mind and they would want to, I think. And I think we underestimate the positive influence that we can all have. And yeah, this is my contribution at least. I know it's not the only bit, but please have a go at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeroen. Thank you. Thank you for your great explanation and presentation about the different use cases that you have, implementing actually indeed to work together to try to have a positive impact on what we can do instead of talking to people what they can do. Also considering the time, I will give the floor to our last external speaker, which is Hendrik Bruns. He is from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and I will give you the floor. If it's okay, you can also use your slide, otherwise simply say next slide and I will do it for you.
Thanks a lot. I just had to give you control back. I will not ask it again because I couldn't activate my mic and...
Okay, now you can do it if it's correct. Okay.
Yeah, it will probably be a bit because I'm having animations, but let's see.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk to you. So first of all, my name is Hendrik Bruns. Very impressed by the high turnout. So it's super great to see also that much engagement in the chat. I'm working at the Competence Center on Behavioral Insights at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. So our role is basically to help improve European policies based on science, and in our case, based on behavioral science. So we are looking at how humans make decisions, basically everything that you just learned based on Francis and colleagues' introduction to this topic. And always with the goal to improve EU policies. And we are looking, in this project that I'm going to talk to you about, we looked at how can we leverage all the knowledge from behavioral science to reduce food waste in the European Union, because the European Commission actually set food waste reduction targets for all EU member states. So all the member states have now the goal or the objective to reduce consumer food waste by 30%. That's a lot. And actually, the reason why this is a lot is that consumers actually are responsible for a lot of food waste. And overall, we see, okay, I can't show these, but we see actually that there is a lot of food waste in the European Union. So if food waste were its own country, it would be, in terms of how much greenhouse gas it emits, it would be the third biggest polluter worldwide. So just behind China and the United States, food waste globally would create the most greenhouse gas. And in the EU, it's still on the 5th row. Germany, by far the highest amount of CO2 emitted based on food waste, or overall, and then followed by food waste on the 5th rank. And it's actually, we know all that food waste is bad. It creates so many negative effects because we are creating carbon emissions because we're wasting food. We're just wasting money because we are wasting food. It's also morally wrong, and most of us feel very bad when we realize that we are wasting food, because we know there are a lot of people in the world, but actually also in the European Union, you cannot afford a quality meal every day. And if you then consider that on average, each person per year wastes 131 kilogram of perfectly edible food, and this adds up by all the almost 500 million people in the European Union, that's actually a staggering number. And we all know that. We know it's important to do something about it. But as Franz already said, the step between wanting to do something and actually doing is actually larger than we often think. And he presented you, if you remember, for example, the theory of planned behavior, where perceived behavioral control and other factors, attitudes, lead to a behavioral intention. And this behavioral intention, if you have the behavioral control, then leads to behavior. This is one way to think about how people make decisions. I'm here showing you a very similar but slightly different model that I'm using, but it will be very familiar. Basically, if or if not, we waste food or reduce our food waste, depends on if we are motivated to reduce our food waste, if we have the opportunity, so if our environment, if our kitchen allows us to reduce food waste, and also if we have the knowledge, the abilities to do so. So we can be as motivated to reduce our food waste as we want, but if we are so stressed every day after work that we need to have only 5 minutes to plan our meal, and then maybe we cook too much, or we have to at the same time navigate our whole family that wants to eat, these limiting factors can be very make it very difficult to actually reduce our food waste, even though we might want to very strongly because we are convinced it's important, right? So these 3 factors here, in order to really sustainably reduce our food waste, they all need to be to help in reducing food waste. They all need to be there. We can be as motivated and as knowledgeable as we want, but if the context, if the opportunities are just not there, it will be very difficult, or it will not work. And of course, there's these opportunity, motivation, and ability factors. They consist of different other factors. For example, the social norms that we talked about. If we have a supportive social environment that helps us, enables us in acting on our motivation to reduce food waste, this will create an environment that makes it easier for us to reduce our food waste. If the time, schedule, lifestyle that we are living is conducive to reducing food waste, this will have a beneficial effect. Also, very important, the legal and regulatory framework in which we act. If we are very motivated to reduce food waste, but it's so easy to buy too big portion sizes in restaurants or in supermarkets, then this will inevitably make it more likely that we waste food because we buy huge portion sizes. So all of these different factors, they play a role in whether or not we reduce food waste. And there are other factors that play a role: our emotions, our awareness of the problem, our attitudes towards how bad do we think food waste actually is, our skills, our knowledge, and also, for example, like Franz already said, our perceived control. Do we actually think we can change our behavior, or do we think, well, I can try as much as I want, but I can't? All of these factors, that's very important to understand, and we call them here the drivers of consumer food waste. And that's actually, I think I didn't say that, but it's all based on a project that was run with experts from the Joint Research Center at the Commission, but also with external experts, like science from university, but also practitioners that actually work on reducing food waste. For example, you might have heard of the app Too Good To Go, where you can buy food that would otherwise go to waste, but that's still perfectly well to eat. Experts from there were also working to this European consumer food waste. So after understanding here why people waste food and already hinting towards the barriers, so there might be people, for example, if you look on the top right, I see if I can use the laser pointer in the top right, can think of this as a person, or as a way to describe a person that is low ability, low motivation, and low opportunity. So for them, it's actually quite difficult to reduce food waste, or to get them to reduce their food waste, because they're not motivated, they don't know how, and they don't have the right environment that makes it easy for them to reduce their food waste. Whereas other people, for them, maybe they are very highly motivated and they also have the necessary skills, but the environment doesn't really help them in doing it. So you can think of all these different combinations, and these are just 4 examples. But that's also a bit hinting towards a discussion or a question in the chat. Like, is there one audience that we are trying to get something to do to reduce food waste, or are there different people that all have different needs? It's not just motivating people to reduce food waste. Some people are already motivated. They have other needs. They need other help in reducing food waste. And I think it's very important to realize that for the European Commission, but also for companies whose mission it is to reduce food waste, to realize that we are talking to very different audiences that all have different needs. And here, just to finish on this graph, or on this image, these arrows, these yellow arrows, are examples of where certain interventions could try to improve. So if your ability is low, then you need an intervention that increases your ability to reduce food waste. If your ability is already high, there's no really need for an intervention that, or for presentation, for example, that tells you how to reduce food waste, for example, then other things are needed. Some examples. So how can we now learn for interventions that help you to reduce consumer food waste? You can start from a low awareness. So there might be people, they are not aware that their food waste is a problem. And this might lead to a low motivation to reduce food waste. But you might also have people who just have no time, right? And no time doesn't really affect food waste. If you have no time, I hope this image shows correctly. So having no time actually results in you not even having any opportunity to reduce your food waste, because you might want to, but there's just not the right time after work, after school, after university to actually do what you want to do. And that's an important realization. And in such a case, or for such a group of people who doesn't have the right time in order to reduce their food waste, they might profit from, for example, interventions that help them plan their food accordingly, use planning interventions, explain them about storage methods, or make it easier for them to store products, food products, long-term, and especially when they have busy schedules, right? So there are different mechanisms that might profit those people, but then importantly, it helps people where the reason for generally not reducing their food waste is that they don't have the time. This wouldn't help anyone who doesn't reduce food waste because he just doesn't think it's important, because he doesn't want to, because he's not motivated to do so. If you give someone who's not motivated help in planning, efficient planning and storage methods, it will be either not effective at all or at least less effective than if you do that with someone for whom this is really the reason that they're not reducing food waste. And yeah, this doesn't show.
Oh, you're finished, sorry.
Yeah, so this is the last, well, thank you actually. And yeah, let me know in the chat if you have any questions or have any other things that you would like to know.
Yes, thank you, Hendrik. Really excellent and very good to see all these different use cases and actions that you try to do and to reduce the food waste, which is a very clear example of day-to-day decision making that we can influence with maybe easy but sometimes more complex interventions. And I think it's a very strong research project to try to focus on this. As you also have, oh, wait, I will stop the laser pointer. Yeah, let's wrap up because we are at the end of this this webinar. I think that we had 1 hour and a half, but we could easily fill up 5 to 8 hours with all the information that we would try to provide you with. I thank especially the 3 external speakers who did an excellent job in trying to summarize, but also show the implementation of all these different theories and actions that we try to disentangle from scientific research. So what you can see is that human behavior, what we try to show is that human behavior is a crucial factor in climate mitigation strategies. We have an influence on our day-to-day behavior, but we need to find a way how to do this. So this behavioral understanding is essential, and our beliefs and intentions, they are there to shape your behavior. And also if you think about yourself, but also as we have shown with the external speakers, that if you want to change other people's behavior, talk to them, communicate with them, speak to them, try to understand them, using the different theoretical frameworks that we described today. And also remember the cognitive biases. So people mostly also work on a very irrational decision making, and they make decisions based on the information that they have provided with or that they are used to. And these heuristics, they are very influential. I want to also explain to you, that we try to explain to you that there are many debiasing tools that are existing to help overcome these cognitive biases, and they facilitate pro-environmental behaviors that are needed to mitigate the climate change. Before you leave, I will ask you several things. So first of all, there is a next webinar of the EU Climate Action Academy that more information will be shared soon. We also have the next event on the 8th of October, where we celebrate the citizen engagement in climate action. It's an online event. And the registration link to participate online is in the chat. And then, of course, also make a change by becoming a PACT ambassador. This is a chance for all citizens across Europe to do something. We try to provide you with the tools, but of course, it's up to you to register and do something and help us making this happen. The call is open from the 1st of October, so actually from today until the end of this month. More information can also be found in the link in the chat. And of course, check out the website and subscribe to the newsletter for more information. There was one more thing. When we finish this webinar, there will be a questionnaire or survey being popped up just a few seconds after we close this meeting. We would be very happy if you could fill in this questionnaire. It will take you only a few minutes from your side to provide some feedback for this webinar, so we can also learn for future webinars and future events. I think that I speak on behalf of the full team that has been developing this webinar, that I would like to thank you because we appreciate it a lot that you were with so many, first of all, that you are very engaged. I see a lot of reactions in the chats, a lot of hands and hearts, so thank you for that as well. And then we of course hope to see you anytime soon in future activities that we organize following the Green Deal implementation and the DG Klima plans for mitigating the climate change. So thank you again, also to the panelists, and then we hope to see you soon.